Sarah Miller walked through the back door of Le Grand Palais restaurant that morning, attracting no attention in her worn coat and simple clothes. Kitchen director Antoine Dupont gave her a dismissive look and said, "Even our dishwasher position is filled." 2 hours later, when the chef suffered a heart attack and the VIP room was filled with 12 ambassadors waiting for dinner, Antoine's biggest surprise was just beginning. Located on a stylish corner of Fifth Avenue in Manhattan, Le Grand Palais was one of the city's most prestigious restaurants. With its Art Deco-style decoration, crystal chandeliers, marble floors, and velvet curtains, it was a favorite spot for wealthy clients, celebrities, and world leaders. Serving the most elegant examples of French cuisine, the restaurant had held 3 Michelin stars for the past 5 years and sometimes had a waiting list of up to 6 months for reservations. The head chef of the restaurant, Dominique Bertrand, was a living legend in French cuisine. At 55, trained in Paris, graduating top of his class from Le Cordon Bleu, he was a world-renowned culinary master. Bertrand was known not only for his extraordinary dishes, but also for his stern temperament and perfectionism. He had zero tolerance for mistakes in his kitchen. Even slightly overstirring a sauce or misplacing a garnish was enough to incur his angry tirades. Kitchen director Antoine Dupont was Chef Bertrand's right-hand man. At 40, slim-built with sharp facial features, always wearing a perfectly pressed chef's jacket, Antoine enforced iron discipline in the kitchen. After graduating from a prestigious culinary school, he had spent most of his career alongside Chef Bertrand, adopting his methods and philosophy. When Chef Bertrand was absent, Antoine managed the kitchen and expected complete obedience from everyone. For Antoine, the kitchen hierarchy was sacred, and every newcomer had to start at the bottom rung of the ladder. That morning, the kitchen was in its usual state of controlled chaos. There was a special event planned for the evening, a special dinner for 12 ambassadors and their spouses who were in town for the United Nations General Assembly. This wasn't just a dinner, it was an international diplomatic event. The menu had been planned weeks in advance, and ingredients had been carefully selected from around the world. Chef Bertrand had been in the kitchen since early morning, checking every detail and giving directions to his chefs. Antoine was by his side, noting down every instruction in his notebook, ensuring the chef's wishes were followed to the letter. "The foie gras texture still isn't right," grumbled Chef Bertrand, looking at the plate in front of him. "Pierre, do this again, and this time do it as I showed you. It should be softer, creamier." "Yes, chef," replied Pierre, a young chef at 25, immediately getting to work. "Antoine," called Chef Bertrand, "did you check the truffle shipment? The quality last time was below my expectations." "Yes, chef," said Antoine. "It arrived this morning. We had it specially flown in from Italy, from the supplier you specified. The quality is excellent." Chef Bertrand nodded. "Good. Everything must be perfect tonight. You know the French ambassador is very particular, and the Japanese ambassador is a known gourmet. Not even the slightest error is acceptable." Antoine made another note in his book. "Understood, chef. Everything is under control." Just then, the back door of the kitchen opened and Sarah Miller walked in. At 42, she was of medium height with brown hair. She wore worn jeans, a simple white t-shirt, and an old gray coat. Her hair was pulled back in a casual bun, and she wore no makeup. She carried a small weathered bag. When Sarah entered through the back door of the restaurant, the chefs and assistants working in the kitchen gave her a quick glance but paid little attention. Everyone was busy with their tasks. Vegetables were being chopped, sauces were being stirred, meats were being marinated. Sarah paused for a moment, surveying the kitchen. In her eyes was the analytical gaze of an experienced chef, assessing the equipment, the layout, the workflow. Sarah approached Antoine directly. "Good morning," she said in a calm voice. "I've come for a job application. I saw an advertisement in the newspaper saying you were looking for kitchen staff." Antoine looked up at Sarah. His eyes surveyed her from head to toe, and a dissatisfied expression settled on his face. For Antoine, first impressions were very important, and the woman before him didn't look like someone who would work in a luxury restaurant. "The advertisement is for a sous chef position," he said coldly. "Do you have experience?" "Yes," said Sarah. "I've worked in kitchens for many years." "Where?" Antoine asked skeptically. "Various places," Sarah replied without going into detail. In America and Europe. Antoine pursed his lips. Do you have a CV? References? Working at Le Grand Palais requires serious experience. This is a 3 Michelin star restaurant. Sarah took a folded piece of paper from her bag. My CV is here. Antoine took the paper and quickly skimmed through it. The CV looked simple, with names of a few small restaurants, none of which were well known. The Little Kitchen, Brooklyn, Café Lumière, New Orleans, La Petite Auberge, Montreal, and at the very end a small note, La Maison de Lumière, Paris, 2010 to 2015. Antoine passed over this last name without much attention. In his opinion, this CV was far too inadequate for a sous chef position, especially at a place like Le Grand Palais. Antoine placed the paper on the table. I'm sorry, but you don't have sufficient experience to work at Le Grand Palais, he said in a definitive tone. Even our dishwasher position is filled. Perhaps you could try your luck at another restaurant, somewhere more suitable. Sarah stood silently for a moment, then nodded. I understand, thank you. As she turned to leave, she added, You have an important dinner tonight, I believe. Antoine frowned. How do you know that? I read it in the newspaper, said Sarah. A dinner for United Nations delegates. Yes, said Antoine curtly. And we're very busy. Good day. Sarah nodded quietly and began walking toward the door. Just then a noise came from the other end of the kitchen. Everyone turned in that direction. Chef Bertrand, his face flushed, was clutching his chest with one hand. He tried to hold onto the counter, but his legs were trembling. Antoine, he called in a hoarse voice, I'm not feeling well. He staggered for a moment, then collapsed to the floor. Chef! Several chefs shouted simultaneously. Antoine rushed to Chef Bertrand. Chef! Are you all right? Chef Bertrand! The chef didn't respond. He was breathing rapidly, his face contorted with pain, his hand still on his chest. Antoine looked around in panic. Call an ambulance. Right now. A chef ran to the phone. Sarah was about to exit the door when she stopped and looked back. Chef Bertrand was lying on the floor, with Antoine kneeling beside him. Everyone in the kitchen was in a panic. No one knew what to do. Step aside, said Sarah, re-entering the kitchen. She took off her coat, placed it on a chair, and approached Chef Bertrand. Do you know first aid? Antoine looked up at her. What? No, we. Sarah quickly came to Chef Bertrand's side and knelt down. I do. I used to be a nurse. She checked the chef's pulse, opened his eyelids, checked his reflexes. He's showing symptoms of a heart attack, she said in a calm but serious voice. How long will it take for the ambulance to arrive? At least 15 minutes, someone said anxiously. The traffic is very heavy. Sarah quickly positioned Chef Bertrand appropriately and began administering first aid. Give him an aspirin. Do you have any? And bring a blanket. He needs to be kept from going into shock. Antoine nodded in shock, then sent someone to the first aid cabinet. Another chef ran and brought a blanket. Sarah carefully placed Chef Bertrand in a lateral position, covered him with the blanket, and continued to monitor his breathing. Throughout all this, her hands were quick but calm, her voice authoritative, yet composed. When the ambulance arrived, the paramedics said that Sarah had administered the correct intervention, which might have saved Chef Bertrand's life. They placed the chef on a stretcher and took him away. He would need to stay in the hospital for at least one night. The kitchen staff looked at each other in shock. Antoine ran his hands through his hair, a panic-stricken expression on his face. This is a disaster, he said. Tonight we were supposed to prepare a special menu for the United Nations delegates. How will we do this without the chef? What kind of menu? Asked Sarah, still standing there observing the situation. Antoine turned to her, momentarily having forgotten that Sarah was still there. 8 courses, each requiring a different culinary technique. Foie gras tart, truffle risotto, quail with wild mushrooms, wagyu beef. These aren't easy dishes to prepare. Can't you call another chef? Antoine shook his head. In such a short time? Impossible. Chefs who can work at Le Grand Palais standards plan their schedules months in advance. What about you? Asked Sarah. Can't you manage the kitchen? Antoine laughed bitterly. I'm good with sauces, but I'm not a chef, especially not at this level for such an important dinner. This United Nations dinner is a matter of great prestige for the restaurant. If we cancel or serve a poor meal, Our reputation will be ruined. Sarah thought for a moment, then, I can help, she said quietly. Antoine turned to her, a look of disbelief on his face. You? How could you possibly help? I told you I have kitchen experience, said Sarah. May I see the menu? Antoine looked doubtful, but he had no other option. He took a thick folder from his desk and handed it to Sarah. Here's the menu and all the recipes. Chef Bertrand worked for weeks to prepare these. Sarah took the folder and began to quickly skim through it. The menu was truly impressive. Each dish required complex techniques, special ingredients, and precise timing. Sarah examined each page carefully, taking some notes. Antoine and the other chefs watched her, trying to understand what she was attempting to do. Yes, Sarah finally said. This can be done. Are the ingredients ready? Yes, they're all here, said Antoine, still skeptical. But I repeat, this is Le Grand Palais, a 3 Michelin star restaurant. Those small places on your CV, this is a completely different level. Sarah paused for a moment, then, perhaps you didn't read my CV very carefully, she said. Antoine looked at Sarah's CV again. Among the small restaurant names, the name at the bottom caught his attention. La Maison de Lumière, Paris, 2010 à 2015. Antoine's eyes widened. La Maison de Lumière? You worked there? Yes, said Sarah. For 5 years. In what position? Sarah smiled slightly. Head chef. Antoine's jaw dropped. La Maison de Lumière was one of Paris's most prestigious restaurants, a 3 Michelin star establishment, world-renowned. Antoine knew this restaurant and its chef very well. Everyone in the gastronomy world did. But then you're... Sarah Miller, she introduced herself. Yes, that's Sarah Miller. The blood drained from Antoine's face. The chefs around him also looked at each other in astonishment. Sarah Miller was a legend in the culinary world, the chef who had led La Maison de Lumière to 3 Michelin stars, who had twice won the Chef of the Year award, who had written countless cookbooks and hosted television shows. Her innovative techniques, her style that combined traditional French cuisine with a modern approach, had inspired many young chefs. However, 5 years ago, she had suddenly disappeared, withdrawing from the culinary world. No one knew where she had gone or why. But why? Asked Antoine, still in shock. Why did you come to Le Grand Palais like this? Why didn't you introduce yourself? Because I wanted to see those who truly love cooking, said Sarah. Those who do this job not for titles or fame, but for the food itself. And I was looking for a new start, a place where I would be judged by my skills alone, not by my name. Antoine bowed his head in shame. He had just deemed one of the most respected chefs in the culinary world, not even qualified for dishwashing. I apologize, Chef Miller. I didn't know. It's all right, said Sarah. Now let's focus on tonight's dinner. Chef Bertrand's menu is truly impressive. Out of respect for him, we'll preserve the menu as much as possible, making only a few small adjustments. But some preparations? Don't worry, said Sarah. I'm here. Now let's gather everyone. We'll have a team meeting. Antoine quickly gathered all the kitchen staff. There were 20 of them in total. Sous chefs, station chefs, cooks, and assistants. They all gathered around Sarah, most having heard who she was, in a state of shock and excitement. Sarah began to speak with a confident but calm demeanor. Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah Miller. Today, in Chef Bertrand's absence, with our respect for him and Le Grand Palais, we will prepare this important dinner. I trust in each of your talents and professionalism. Now, our time is limited, so let's start organizing immediately. Sarah reviewed the menu again, then assigned specific tasks to each chef. She determined who would work at which station, who would be responsible for the preparation of which dish. Then she began to tour the kitchen, checking each station, examining the ingredients, demonstrating some techniques. Antoine was amazed as he watched Sarah. Her presence in the kitchen, her authority, her calmness, all were the marks of a master chef. The chefs approached her with respect, listened carefully, and immediately implemented her instructions. Sarah didn't shout or threaten like Chef Bertrand, but she still maintained complete control in the kitchen. By noon, preparations were progressing well. Sarah checked each station again, made some adjustments, suggested small changes to some recipes. The consistency of this truffle sauce should be a bit thicker, she told one chef, and the cooking time for this risotto will be 1 minute shorter. It should be perfectly al dente. At 3 o'clock, Sarah gathered all the chefs again. You've done excellent work so far, she said. Now let's do the final checks and prepare for service. Tonight, every plate must be perfect. We will maintain Le Grand Palais standards, perhaps even elevate them. Antoine came to Sarah's side. Chef Miller, I want to apologize again for not recognizing you. Sarah smiled. Antoine, there's no need to apologize. Actually, not being recognized was a relief for me. For the past 5 years, I wanted to stay away from that world, but I guess the kitchen called me back. Why did you leave? After all that success at La Maison de Lumière? Sarah's eyes gazed into the distance. Sometimes too much success can also be a burden. The constant expectation of innovation, the constant pressure for perfection. After a while, I couldn't enjoy cooking anymore. I was just doing it with the fear of being judged. So I left, moved to America, worked in small places, rediscovered the joy of cooking. Antoine nodded thoughtfully. I understand. And now, after tonight? Now let's just focus on tonight, said Sarah. We'll think about tomorrow when it comes. By evening, the VIP room was filled with 12 ambassadors and their spouses. Each was dressed in their country's formal attire, seated at the tables. The hall was elegantly decorated, each table specially arranged. Waiters stood ready with white gloves and formal attire. Antoine looked at Sarah anxiously. Are we ready? Sarah smiled. We're ready. The dinner service began. The first dish was an appetizer of smoked salmon topped with caviar and dill cream. Sarah personally checked each plate, made the final touches, ensuring everything was perfect. The chefs followed her directives, working inspired by her calmness and expertise. When the first plates returned from service, the waiters relayed the ambassadors' reactions. Magnificent. Extraordinary. The best meal I've ever had. Sarah nodded. Good. Now we move to the second dish, the foie gras tart. Each plate will be kept in the oven for exactly 30 seconds, just before serving. This is very important. As the night progressed, a wave of enthusiasm spread through the kitchen. Everyone was experiencing what it was like to work under the guidance of a great chef. Sarah wasn't just giving directions, she was also teaching how to make a sauce better, how to present a garnish more elegantly. And while doing all this, she never raised her voice, never scolded anyone, seeing every mistake as a learning opportunity. This sauce has thickened a bit too much, she told a chef. But don't worry, add a bit of white wine and butter, it will adjust the consistency. And next time, keep the heat a bit lower. At the sixth dish, a crisis occurred. The vegetables to be served with the main course, on the Wagyu beef, had burned due to a chef's carelessness. Antoine ran to Sarah in panic. Chef, the vegetables are ruined. What will we do? Sarah remained calm. What do we have in storage? Some asparagus, mushrooms, carrots. Perfect. Let's quickly prepare a ratatouille. Classic but effective. It will go wonderfully with the beef. Within 10 minutes, the new garnish was ready and service continued. The guests weren't even aware that a crisis had occurred. When the meal ended, the sound of applause from the hall reached the kitchen. The United Nations Secretary General personally requested to come to the kitchen to express his thanks. Antoine looked at Sarah. Chef Miller, please go out and accept the thanks. Sarah nodded. Let's all go together. This was a team effort. The kitchen team, with Sarah at the front, entered the hall. The diplomats were giving a standing ovation. The UN Secretary General stepped forward. The meal we ate tonight wasn't just a feast. It was a work of art. I extend my most sincere thanks to the chef and her team. Sarah smiled. Thank you, Mr. Secretary General. It was an honor to serve you with my team. The French ambassador stepped forward. Madam Miller, what a great surprise to see you back in the kitchen. I still remember your meals at La Maison de Lumière in Paris. I didn't know you were in New York. I'm making a new start, Mr. Ambassador, said Sarah. And tonight, it was a great pleasure to work with this wonderful team. That night, something changed in the kitchen of Le Grand Palais. The chefs had seen a different style of leadership. An approach based on respect and cooperation rather than fear and pressure, and the results were evident. A perfect meal, satisfied guests, and a proud team. The next day when Chef Bertrand called from the hospital, Antoine told him everything. How Sarah Miller had come, how he hadn't recognized her at first, and how she had served a magnificent dinner. Chef Bertrand was silent for a while. Then, "Ask her to stay with us," he said. "Let Le Grand Palais have two head chefs, me and Sarah Miller. It would be an honor for this restaurant." Antoine immediately called Sarah and conveyed the offer. Sarah thought about it, then accepted. "But on one condition," she said, "there will be some changes in the kitchen." "What kind of changes?" Antoine asked a bit anxiously. "Everyone in the kitchen will be treated equally," said Sarah. "There will be no shouting, yelling, or humiliation. Experience is important, yes, but everyone should be given a chance. Sometimes the greatest talents come from the most unexpected places, and we will work as a team. There will be a hierarchy, of course, but everyone's ideas will be valuable." Antoine nodded. "Absolutely, Chef Miller. I've learned this lesson firsthand." "And one more thing," said Sarah. "I want to start a community program. I want to provide culinary education to local youth, teach them the art of cooking, maybe a few hours each week." Antoine smiled. "That's a wonderful idea. I'm sure Chef Bertrand will support it too." A week later, Chef Bertrand was discharged from the hospital. When he returned to the kitchen, he met Sarah. The two chefs approached each other with great respect. Bertrand was well aware of Sarah's reputation in the culinary world and saw it as a great honor that she had agreed to work at Le Grand Palais. "Chef Miller, welcome to our kitchen," said Bertrand. "Antoine told me how you were our guardian angel. I'm grateful to you, both for what you did for my personal health and for preserving our restaurant's reputation." "Thank you, Chef Bertrand," said Sarah. "It was a pleasure to cook your menu. I've always admired your creativity and technique." The two chefs began to work with a shared vision. Chef Bertrand's classic French techniques and Sarah's innovative approach took Le Grand Palais' menu to a new level, and a new culture developed in the kitchen, a culture based on cooperation and mutual respect rather than fear and pressure. Antoine Dupont had changed too. He was now a more humble, more open-minded kitchen director. He had learned a lot from Sarah, not just cooking techniques, but also about leadership and people management. A year later, Le Grand Palais was named the best restaurant in New York. In an article in the New York Times, the restaurant was described as, "Le Grand Palais stands out not only for its magnificent dishes, but also for the positive atmosphere in its kitchen." Two world-class chefs, Dominique Bertrand and Sarah Miller, have struck a perfect balance between classic and modern, conquering both palates and hearts. Under Sarah and Bertrand's joint leadership, the restaurant reached new heights. But perhaps their most important achievement was the community program they started. Every Sunday, the kitchen was open to disadvantaged youth, providing them with free culinary education. Some of these young people were later hired as interns at Le Grand Palais, while others continued their careers elsewhere. Antoine often remembered that first day, the day Sarah first came to the kitchen, when he looked at her clothes and thought she wasn't even suitable for dishwashing. How wrong he had been. That day, Antoine had learned a valuable lesson, not to judge people by their appearance, to give everyone a chance to look for talent in unexpected places. 3 years later, one day, a young woman came to the kitchen of Le Grand Palais. With her simple clothes, timid demeanor, and inexperienced appearance, she reminded Antoine of Sarah's first day. When Antoine saw the young woman, he smiled. "Welcome," he said in a warm voice. "How can I help you?" "I've come for a job application," said the young woman in a shy voice. "I saw an advertisement in the newspaper." Antoine nodded. "Of course. Come, let me introduce you to Chef Miller. She's always open to new talents." Antoine took the young woman to Sarah's office. Sarah was planning a menu at her desk. When she looked up, an understanding light appeared in her eyes. She could see herself in that young woman, excited, scared, but passionate. "Hello," said Sarah, standing up and extending her hand. "I'm Sarah Miller. Welcome to our kitchen." The young woman shook her hand, her eyes filled with gratitude and excitement. "Thank you, Chef Miller. It's a great honor to be here." Sarah smiled. "Everyone here has a chance. What matters is how you use that chance." As Antoine watched from the door, he smiled with pride. Le Grand Palais was now known not just for its magnificent dishes, but also as a place that gave everyone an opportunity, a place that saw potential. And it all began that morning when Sarah Miller walked through the back door. 5 years later, Sarah Miller decided to open her own restaurant, called Second Chance, a place that utilized secondhand materials and opened its doors to people seeking a second chance. In the restaurant's kitchen worked people from different backgrounds, former inmates, homeless people, immigrants, all preparing magnificent dishes under Sarah's guidance. And Second Chance quickly became one of New York's most popular restaurants. Sarah occasionally visited Le Grand Palais, catching up with Chef Bertrand and Antoine. Once, Antoine asked her, "That day, why did you forgive me for being so rude?" Sarah smiled. "Because we all make mistakes, Antoine. What's important is to learn from those mistakes and grow. And you truly did grow." Antoine nodded. "Thanks to you. I never forgot the lesson you taught me that day. Don't judge people by their appearance. Give everyone a chance. And perhaps most importantly, true talent will always shine, no matter how much it tries to hide." Sarah placed her hand on Antoine's shoulder in a friendly gesture. That's why the kitchen isn't just about cooking. It's about people, stories, second chances. Antoine and Sarah looked at Le Grand Palais' elegant hall. At the table sat people from different countries, different cultures. They all shared one thing, a love of good food. And in the kitchen, a team from different backgrounds worked in harmony. "You know," said Sarah, "sometimes life's most delicious surprises come from the plainest packages. And true mastery isn't just about what you cook, but with whom you cook it and why you cook it." Antoine nodded. "And perhaps most importantly, always being open-minded, giving a chance to everyone who knocks on the door. Because you never know, the person knocking could be someone who will change your life." Sarah smiled. "Just like me when I walked through the back door that morning." "Yes," said Antoine, "just like you." And perhaps this was one of life's most beautiful lessons. Every day, every moment, people who will change our lives can cross our paths, as long as we have the eyes to see and the heart to understand. Sarah Miller's story wasn't just a success story, it was also a story of second chances, overcoming prejudices, and discovering true potential. And this journey, which began in the kitchen of Le Grand Palais, had changed thousands of lives, not just with delicious food, but also with a message that touched hearts. Never judge someone by their appearance, because true value is always hidden inside. What did you learn from this story? Have you ever been judged by your appearance? Or have you judged someone that way? Share your experiences in the comments. If you like this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. We'll be back every week with similar inspiring stories. Which country are you watching from today? Let us know in the comments. Remember, true talent is always within us, and appearance never reflects the potential inside.